What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Bucks. Today, with Camille, we're going to be talking about regular season strategy. Does home court matter? How do the Bucks approach an 82-game regular season next year? We're going to look at some lineup stuff from this year. We're also just going to talk about age profile. When these NBA players get to my age, or me just knowing how old I am, that means you're old. That means you're old by NBA standards. So we're going to talk about that. And then Camille's been doing some draft research, so I'm going to pick her brain about what she found on the weekend doing that. So let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman, just dropping my pen on the floor and being incredibly distracted. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my other work over at ESPN. Joining me, as she does every week, Camille Davis. A back-to-back podcast night for Camille. She just wrapped up with the Technical Foul podcast. You can check that out. Of course, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day. If you haven't joined us on YouTube yet, you should do that. And if you do that, then you can see that I'm dressed for winter in Australia. Camille's just gone through what I'm reliably told from Camille was the hottest day in 10 years, which I actually find hard to believe, but there's not many people on this earth I trust more than you, Camille. So I'm going to believe that.
Yeah, I saw a post from Fox 6 News, the weather, and they said the last time that it's been this hot in Milwaukee was sometime in July back in 2012. So, as you said, kind of taking Fox 6's word on it, I'm going to trust the news source here. And just from anecdotally being outside, I have not been this hot in this city in quite some time. Although I think official temperature read I saw was 98 or 99 degrees today. My car was reading over 100, depending on where I was in the city at times. And let me tell you, going into the podcast studio, it was my first time back in quite some time after being sick. First time back with 4 other bodies in a space where you can't really have like loud air conditioning and all that stuff.
There's some sweating going on.
It was quite an endurance test, I tell you that.
So speaking of you being unwell, you did tweet about this the other day, so it's public. I feel confident that I can bring this up. You said you were still struggling a little bit, and someone actually referenced on Twitter that things went downhill after you podcasted with me last, which I thought was a little bit harsh. But instead of giving you the week off and letting you fully recover, I've decided that I'm basically the Tom Thibodeau of podcast hosts, and I'm going to make you put in big minutes here tonight. But look, I'm glad you're feeling a little bit better and willing to come back on.
Definitely. Being able to podcast again was one of the things where I was like, okay, I got to get better enough to be able to podcast again, because the voice was gross. And I was like, what am I going to do without the voice? To the point where when my mom talked to me, she said, you sound like an 82-year-old man. So she's like, just call me later when you get all that cleared up. So still getting the last bit out, but I'm happy to be feeling better, even though I'm still dealing with some of the, what they call it, COVID fatigue. It just kind of waves over you from time to time where you think you can keep doing something, and then halfway through, you're just like, you know what? Actually, a nap is what should be happening in this moment, not trying to do laundry or whatever the task is at that time. So yeah, just trying to take it easy when I can, but also get things done. So finding my balance.
All right, let's get into this regular season stuff for the Bucks, and I wanted to talk about this with you today because I was just thinking about it, this morning as I was braving the elements to be able to function with a coffee. I don't have a coffee machine at home, so I had to brave the elements. I was out there, and I was trying to think about the Bucks and the regular season and the way they've gone about it over the last 4 years, and I would say, for 2019 and 2020, hell for leather, bull at a gate, flat knacker, Camille, whatever you want to say to describe the way the Bucks approached the regular season. But they were trying to break records. And in many ways, it's actually the approach that I think most typifies Giannis. This is the way he plays. This is the way he approaches the game. And then I would describe 2021 as experimentation. I think they learned some lessons from 2020 from 2020 and certainly the bubble and the way things ended, which, by the way, I'm reading Bubble Ball right now from Ben Golliver, and just even reading through that and remembering and getting a good insight into the circumstances those players went through. I've never felt more like, again, there's no Lakers fans listening, so it's totally fine to say this. But I've never thought more that there is a playoffs or a postseason that's more irrelevant than that one, considering the conditions that players were under, and of course, everything else that was going on in America at the time. So there was that, and following on from that, again, I would say experimentation was how I would describe 2021. They probably knew they needed to be more versatile. They needed to have more tricks up their sleeve come postseason. They win the title. That was great. And then coming off the short off season, the Olympics, all the things that went down, and a major injury to Brook Lopez, I would say 2022 was preservation. So, and I think they just wanted to get there. They wanted to peak at the right time. And quite honestly, I think they did a decent job of it. When we spoke about the schedule they had running into the postseason, they were playing all the top teams. We were a little concerned about where they were going to finish. Ultimately, they're 51-31, so a few wins below where they'd been in previous seasons by win percentage. But I thought they gave themselves a chance, but they didn't have home court advantage. Then, of course, obviously, they had the injury to Khris Middleton. But ultimately, they went out in a Game 7 on the road. You would have loved to have that at home. Now, I'm here to tell you that I'm going to suggest that if they shot 4 for 34 from 3 at home, they're probably still losing that Game 7. Like, it wasn't close. Like, I don't think home court was the reason they lost that Game 7. But it is interesting to see how this team, with an extended offseason now, the longest offseason they've had in several years, how they approach next season. As you sit back, how important is number 1 seed, perhaps, home court advantage? How would you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a balance. And I think that when you look at this upcoming season, the way that I'm viewing it, well, we don't really know exactly, like, concretely what this roster is going to look like going into the season. But my hope is that it's a run it back season. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to retain Pat, retain Bobby, have Brook back healthy after, he showed that he was looking like himself for the most part in the playoffs, get Khris back healthy. We saw him playing pickleball with some other teammates recently. So good to see him just active and moving around again. And then you have Giannis, of course, you have Drew. They made it through the season. That being said, if you're running it back, understanding the age of your roster, you have Brook Lopez, who is 34. A key contributor to the squad last year was Wes Matthews. So if he's brought back, he's like 35. 35. George Hill was a contributor during the regular season. He's 36. If you're looking to bring guys like that back, George Hill, Wesley Matthews, and then of course you have Brook Brook coming back. Even Jrue Holiday creeping up there, just turned 32 recently, I believe. There has to be some of that preservation built into the season. So I think that you will see some rest days going on there. But also, this is a team that likes to win. They don't like to lose. And that's not something that they look to do purposely, which I guess you can say about most teams. I won't say all, but you can say that about most teams. And with that being said, there has to be that nice balance of making sure we're resting guys and also that minutes are allocated properly. So maybe you see more, Grayson Allen minutes, or you see guys who aren't going to get rotation minutes. Not saying that Grayson shouldn't be one of those guys, just filling in blanks here. So maybe you see Javon Carter, if he's re-signed, get some minutes. If Jordan Ward is on the roster still, he's getting some minutes. Maybe Sandro makes a leap in his two-way development and you're seeing him more often during the regular season. But I think there has to be a good minutes balance to keep this team as healthy as possible going into that playoff stretch, because I think if this Bucks team has proved anything, yes, home court is nice. We saw it during the championship run, just how dominant Fiserv Forum was. But we also saw this team have some very big wins on the road. I mean, we even saw it this past year in this Boston series. Like, we had a chance to close it out at home in Game 6, and we lost. So having home court during a clinching game didn't really change the mathematics of what happened in that game. Not saying it's not important. Definitely want to finish as a top 4 seed, preferably top 3. But I don't think that pushing players to, play excessive minutes or anything like that, going the Todd Thibodeau route, would be the best bet for this roster this next season if championship aspirations are what we have, and what we need is for the top guys to be as healthy as possible. And although Giannis is only 27, the way that he plays basketball requires you to save him from himself at times. I'll say it like that, and kind of limit his minutes. And Bud's been really good at that in the regular season, keeping these guys pretty fresh. So I don't have any concerns that he'll be able to do that. I do have some concerns about just this roster and how it looks after this upcoming season. So not the 22-23 season, but what do we look like going 23 and 24? Like, part of me feels like this might be not a last run, because we have Khris and Drew and Giannis locked up, and that's the core there. But could this be the last year of Brook Lopez? It very well might be, depending on his age and just how things shake out in that last year of his contract. So, it's been a lovable group. I've enjoyed this Bucks squad, but got to rest him during the regular season, which Bud has proven that he can do. And I think after this season, after running it back, if possible, there are going to be some decisions that have to be made. Because, I mean, just even thinking about George Hill, he just did not look good this past season. And we know there were some injuries involved with that. And who's to say that we already saw the best version of George Hill that we're going to see when he was on the squad during his first run.
No, it's a good call with George Hill, and I've got some lineup numbers that I'm going to throw at you in just a second. Just quickly, when you talked about when you spoke about Khris Middleton playing pickleball, there was one photo that I think Bucks fans were getting real excited about. He looked like he was looking agile out there. He was looking pretty ripped as well. I feel like he's been in the gym. He's been lifting some weights. So shout out to Khris. He's looking good. And by the way, I would say, to me, with the way that guys look after themselves now, with the way certainly at the Bucks, the strength and conditioning team, 30 is the new 35 as far as athletes are concerned. I do really believe that. There's certainly, if you go back a decade ago, maybe you cross that 30 barrier and it's like, geez, he's on the downhill slide. It doesn't really feel like that's the case anymore. And I think for the most part, we've spoke about Khris and Drew as guys that, you're not really going to see them lose this incredible athleticism that they have. Giannis will be a little bit different when he gets to his 32, 33 season. That'll be interesting. That's a long way away. But yeah, I think those guys are fine. But it's a good point you make, because even Pat Connaughton, sometimes you forget about this. I mean, he turns 30 next season. And it's like, okay, well, the only players under 30 that are actually playing, Giannis, obviously, as we know, and then you have Grayson and Bobby, who are both 26. So we'll see. That will be interesting. But I've got some lineup stuff after I talk about our friends at PrizePicks. We know the NBA Finals are still rolling on. And if you're looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA, then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know that you guys will too. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players and an over and under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers, which makes me think, is there anyone out there that was playing PrizePicks for Game 5 of the NBA Finals and had Steph Curry for, I don't know what it would have been. Did anyone have him for like 0 3-point makes in this game? Because if they did, I assume those people are rich and they're on their way to Hawaii or something. I don't know. They'll be doing something good. But the point with PrizePicks is that you can find any prop you want, from points scored, rebounds, and steals. And like I said, you just have to hit on their projected numbers. It's just you versus those numbers that are projected. And again, you can use the award-winning app, and we've got a deal for you like we always do. You can get $50 free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. That's PrizePicks Daily Fantasy made easy. We're going to get to Camille's draft stuff in a little bit here, but the ultimate NBA mock draft starts June 16. We'll have the 50 insiders. Nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board draft experts, plus the Odyssey insiders. First pick is June 16. Search the ultimate NBA mock draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. And as I've mentioned before, my pick is in. My pick's already been made. We will reveal that moving forward, and there will be plenty of disgust with who that I picked, and maybe some random people will be happy. Who knows? But I'm expecting negative feedback. That's all I will say. This lineup stuff that I was talking about. So when I think about what the Bucks need to do next year, and I think you're 100% right in that. I actually don't. Home court would be lovely, but I don't care about it necessarily.
Mhm.
Like I think you're right in terms of managing guys through back-to-backs, certain matchups, whatever. You do what you need to do, and you hope that you're healthy at the end of the season. But when I was going through the 5-man lineups for the Bucks this year, again, the fact they won 51 games is honestly a little bit surprising when you consider the guys they had out, some of the obstacles they had to go through. But Giannis is great. And he's going to carry this team to, that's the floor, really, 50 games, as long as he plays a high percentage of games. So there was 95 5-man lineups in the NBA that played more than 100 minutes throughout the season. Only one of them was from Milwaukee, and it was Drew, Khris, Giannis, Bobby Portis, and Grayson Allen. In terms of net rating, they ranked 45 out of 95. Offense, they were 33. Defense, they were 43. And we understand that certainly defensively, that's where this team took a bit of a hit this year. I know the numbers were relatively similar, but stuff around the basket, those types of things, there were some numbers that suggested that this team significantly missed Brook Lopez because, again, we've spoke about the versatility this team will need in the postseason, but in terms of regular season, when teams aren't exploiting absolutely everything and they're not planning for everything, Brook Lopez is such a floor raiser for this team, and you're just going to be able to rely on the defense consistently that it's going to perform. When Brook did play, and actually the Brook Lopez plus Wesley Matthews starting lineup, they only played 63 minutes together total for the season, which isn't a huge surprise, but that defensive rating was around 105, about 4 points per 100 possessions better, which is not a surprise when you put the two better defensive players in there. So is it realistic that if Wes Matthews returns that he starts for 70 games? Probably not. I think they went by the right approach. Even if you think the year before, I think they went with the right approach with PJ Tucker. He didn't start until it was absolutely necessary. So there will have to be some management there. But I just believe if Brook can stay healthy and he's in this team, yes, you have to address all the roster issues in terms of what you can potentially do in the playoffs. But I think just having him out there automatically puts this team probably up around 55 wins. And you're looking at certainly home court through at least a couple of rounds.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I actually just had a debate with a friend of mine who was saying we got to get rid of Brook Lopez now, and I was like, "Come on, man, don't be one of those guys, please." No, like the Bucks right now, as I see them, there's a championship window. We know this team has championship material, but we just watched them win it last year, and they took Boston to Game 7 this year without Khris Middleton. And again, I'll be the very first person to tell you, of course, injury luck plays a part in your path to a championship. So I'm not trying to discredit what Boston did because Boston won that series. That would be foolish, especially I feel like as a Bucks fan when we just watched our team win a championship. We had good injury luck and we ran against some teams that did not. So I will never just say it's invalid because someone was injured. Like that's just part of the game. And I would have thought that people seeing how the Bucks looked without Brook Lopez would be something that would encourage people to be like, hey, maybe Brook's a valuable piece to this team. But there are still some who just don't see his value, and he brings so much to the team. And I understand the concerns about his age and him getting older and saying like eventually we're going to need another big to be up there next to Giannis. Like if Giannis is not looking to play center and Bobby Portis is not the long solution to play next to Giannis, like another big has to be added that can be a starting caliber big. And I get that. I just feel like this upcoming season is not the time to veer off the Brook Lopez path. I feel like there's still so much can give you that you're not going to be able to get from anyone you can draft this year or draft in the Bucks range, of course, or anyone that you can really get in free agency who can replicate what Brook does for this team. And like you mentioned, some guys are regular season guys, like Wes Matthews didn't get the many minutes in regular season because Wes is more so of a 16 game type of guy. Same thing with PJ Tucker, where there are guys who are going to get big regular season minutes who aren't going to see many in the playoffs because they're not 16 game type of guys. And it's no slight. You need everybody on your roster to play their part for you to get to where you're trying to go. So yeah, I pretty much agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think again, and you already alluded to it, and it's probably a conversation that we'll certainly have at some point in the offseason. Once we know what the Bucks have done this offseason, then like everyone likes to do, you project ahead 12 months and say, okay, well, what does it look like in 12 months? And certainly if you see another 12 months of Brook Lopez, maybe he does look washed. And I can understand why there's people out there saying that if they're trying to come up with a trade that will help the team this year. But I do see a lot of, and I've mentioned it before, but I see a lot of it in the YouTube comments, and it's just like hilarious to me that, and I don't know like what sort of section of fans it's coming from. Maybe they're more Giannis fans than Bucks fans, but the idea that Giannis's legacy has been ruined by Bud, or it's been ruined by the Bucks. And it's like, okay, this team that they have, these four guys, is going to give them the best chance next year to be a really, really damn good team and win another title. And ultimately, if you want to talk about things that ruined his legacy, it was a wet patch on the floor during a game against the Chicago Bulls. That's what it came down to. So I think you're right. It's going to be difficult to manage this team moving forward. And I think really the big decisions come back to, okay, A, how much is the ownership willing to spend year on year on year? And then B, what do they do when they do need to have an extension, possibly for Khris Middleton? What do they do if Brook Lopez next year is out of contract? And then where does he lie in the salary scale of things? So, yeah, it's going to be really difficult. This is the challenge of being a contender year in, year out. But at the same time, you've got Giannis that's really just entering his prime. So I have no concern that this team isn't going to contend for a long time. It's just about trying to figure out the pieces around them, because we've been really lucky. You want to talk about building a legacy. If you're playing in Milwaukee, winning the championship is about as much as you can do. I wouldn't have believed that it was going to happen. And they got really lucky because they got a bunch of guys that fit around him pretty well. And obviously he's just insane and he's a legend. And then that's why they were able to do it. Let's talk about your draft stuff after BetOnline.net, which is number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball finals matchup. The NHL Stanley Cup, I believe, is set now, so you can check that out. Major League Baseball continues to roll on. Shout out to the Brewers for finally winning the game. And, of course, all the latest fighting news from the MMA and UFC to boxing as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Will the Warriors wrap up the title in Game 6? I would probably like to see that. That would be enjoyable for me. Of course, Game 7 is always fun, but I think the sooner the Warriors wrap this up, the better. And I'm happy for Andrew Wiggins as well. So if you want to get the odds for the Game 6, you can do that at betonline.net. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Camille. It's over to you. So Frank was very comprehensive, and we don't have time.
Yeah.
We do not have time for you. Let me just tell you that right now. We started this podcast with Frank the other day, Camille, and I did the intro. I threw it to Frank, and we were 2.5 minutes into the podcast. I didn't get back. I wasn't talking again until the 19-minute mark. So you do what you need to do here, but you tweeted it out.
I did.
You mentioned a few names, and I think a lot of these names are familiar, and certainly names that we've brought up. But is there 2 or 3 of these guys that really stood above the pack that, if they're available, you would be able to talk yourself into being excited?
So here's the thing. I do come in with a similar mind frame as Frank, being as I don't want us to draft a center. I would prefer us to get a more rangy, big. I've been talking about big wings for a while. Like ideally, that's what I would want. I can also see the importance of having a guard. And there's a few different ways you can go there, because we know with the way that Bud coaches this team and how this team plays, even if you are a bucket, if you are going to be a turnstile on defense, you are probably not going to get many minutes in this system. And that's just the reality of the situation. So I did try to keep that in mind. I was aiming for guys who, at the very least, if they could not shoot super well, that there's something in their shooting motion, their form, that makes me think like, okay, maybe this is a skill that they can develop somewhat to be at least someone who can keep you honest. Because I'm thinking about what this team can use. And of course, they could use some additional offense. But then I also wonder, when you put Khris back into that lineup there, a creator, how much shot creation do you need? So overall, I'm going for guys that either can create their own shots, get buckets, or they can really clamp down and play some defense, and they'll be able to help this team in the regular season at the very least this season, and maybe be thrown out there for some spot minutes in the playoffs when it comes to locking up some guys or using some fouls or something along those lines. So there are 6 guys in particular who I wrote like I'd be happy if the Bucks can get, but if I can pick just a few where I'm like, I really hope he's available. You and Justin talked about Dalen Terry yesterday. And this draft is so fascinating to me because the ranges are just all over the place. After the top 3, I'm very much looking forward just to seeing how all of this shakes out, because some of these guys just seem like they're all so close together in the same tiers. Some guys who are projected to go 10 could end up going in the mid-20s for all that we know, based on how the prep has gone. And again, I'm not a draft expert. On the tech file side, if you're looking for the guy who knows all the draft stuff, that's Eric J on our podcast. I just try to, take from him a little bit. But Dalen Terry is probably my number one. 6'7" wing, turns defense into offense. He can go. That's one guy for me. Christian Braun out of Kansas is somebody who seems like he fits what the Bucks like. 6'6" wing. Great athleticism. He's a high flyer, good energy guy. He's a lob threat, plays some defense. On ball, great defender, good help defender. Off the catch, he's a very efficient 3-point shooter, which is important. But he is somebody who is weak off the dribble. Like, he can't really create his own shot. So you got that, but he does all of the other things. And again, when you're drafting at 24 in the draft, or maybe, I forget who mentioned it on here, but maybe the Bucks do trade down and try to get 2 draft picks or 2 shots at it in this draft. But Christian Braun is somebody who I personally like. Also a fan of Wendell Moore out of Duke, 6'5", just a big guard. He can't really create his own shots like that either, like step backs and all that. It's not great. He can be kind of streaky at times, but he has a mid-range game that he is very comfortable with. And as we've seen in the playoffs from time to time, not, of course, projecting that if the Bucks draft Wendell Moore, he's going to be somebody who can play in the playoffs in his first season. But being able to score in the mid-range is a skill, and you see that skill is so much more needed in the playoffs. So he's somebody who can do that, and he's a solid on-ball defender. So Wendell Moore, Christian Brown, and Dalen Terry are probably my 3 that I would be the most excited about to get. Oh, also, honorable mention to Jalen Williams. I just think he's going to be gone at this point before we get there.
It seems. But to your point, again, certainly what I'm reading and talking to people, it does. Even if you just go from one expert's mock draft, a big board, to another expert's mock draft, it's like, wait a damn second. It's like, how is this even possible? And we had some like real pushback in the YouTube comments. I know Justin said that, he doesn't expect that Dalen Terry is going to be there at 24. And there was a lot of people saying, come on, what are you saying that? I think he could be. Sure. I know there's some intel there, though. It's not just a baseless claim, but we'll see. But certainly, again, I've said this to Frank, but in terms of size as well, size is obviously important for defensive purposes. And it is funny that 6'4" almost feels like the baseline now. It's like, if you're smaller than 6'4", it's like, geez, can this guy, can he play? Can this man actually play in the playoffs? So we'll see there. Before we wrap it up, I want to talk about Khris Middleton really quickly. But before I do that, again, thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by a whole crew of experts there to give people an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Khris Middleton, Hollywood star. So I'll be honest. Justin mentioned this, Khris Middleton, Adam Sandler thing on yesterday's show, and I didn't really know what he was talking about, to be quite honest. And then I got an email. Like Netflix sends you these emails, and it's like, here's a movie you would like. And I was like, how do you know I like basketball? That's crazy. And so anyway, I was like, Adam Sandler's really leaning into this, basketball situation now. Like, is he ever going to have another movie where he doesn't have NBA stars in it? Or I don't know what the deal is. You haven't seen it, by the way, Camille, correct?
I've not seen Hustle yet, but it's on my list because we're going to be potting about it soon.
Well, for everyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about, there's an Adam Sandler movie. He's a scout for the 76ers. It's just got endless NBA players in this movie. Like everyone's in it, but Khris Middleton's in it. He's got a couple lines. It's funny because I would go. I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that I don't think Khris Middleton's going to move into acting after he's done. It doesn't seem like it's in his wheelhouse, but nonetheless, it's fun to see him in the movie. So definitely check it out. I didn't look. To me, it's not a classic, but I won't watch it again. But having said that, given what we do for work and what we love doing, which is watching and talking about basketball, there was no way I couldn't watch it. So I recommend everyone goes and checks it out and see what they think. But Khris Middleton, he's playing pickleball. He's in movies. So shout out to Khris. It's I've said it before. Everyone knows I love Khris. As long as he's having a good time, I'm happy, Camille.
All about Money Middleton making the money in various forms, getting the movie checks now, the basketball checks, some endorsement checks. Go ahead, Khris.
There's so many NBA players in this movie. I wonder if they got paid or how much they got paid, because it's like, everyone's in this movie. But anyway, go check it out. Hustle. And check out Locked On Bucks tomorrow as well. We've got a few things coming up. Frank is coming on later in the week. Dave Kane, the radio voice, is going to be on the podcast as well. So we've got a few cool things lined up for the rest of the week, but we'll leave it there for today. For Camille and myself, we'll catch you guys tomorrow.